I've been stuck in this process. I haven't been able to live the life I want to live.
I don't remember specifics beyond an overwhelming sense of relief, and I don't think I felt that type of unburdening ever.
On August 24th, 2019, the sports world fell into a frenzy. Andrew Luck, superstar quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts, declared he was retiring. He was only 29. Largely heralded as one of the most shocking retirements in sports, Luck seemed destined for the Hall of Fame from the beginnings of his professional journey. Son of a former NFL quarterback, highly touted high school recruit, decorated collegiate prospect, and #1 pick in the 2012 NFL Draft. Considered to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league at the time, he had over half his career left, millions of dollars yet to be made, and a ceiling that seemed limitless. He could have become a legend, etched into sports lore. And yet, he chose to walk away from all of it. Andrew Luck held every trait in my theoretical formula of talent. Natural aptitude given his background and opportunities, physical traits in his prototypical quarterback build, intangibles in his mental buildup, IQ, leadership, and luck in his lineage and environments. So why was the outcome of his career so different from those he was being compared to, like his predecessor, who is considered to be one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time? So far, we've explored the tale of Ushijima as someone who had a head start, was one of a lucky few, who reached the very heights of his talent, and yet still continued to aim higher and higher as the series' most singularly imposing force. Up until chapter 351 of Haikyuu, characters exhibited their love for the game of volleyball, in whatever form it presented itself. Continuous, steady improvement, contagious hunger, rediscovering passion, or a sense of wonder and discovery. That made sense to me. After all, Haikyuu translates to volleyball, and is a series about volleyball. Of course it would profess the joys of it. To quote the Olympic coach, "Let's once again prove to the world that volleyball is fun." That's why it's really quite strange. Furudate's introduction of a certain character during the Kamomedai match is an incredibly daring choice, given the timing of his introduction and the foreshadowing his presence provides. Enter Hirugami Sachiro, nicknamed Hirugami the Immovable, second-year middle blocker for Kamomedai. He's clearly a talented middle blocker, we're shown numerous examples of his abilities during the match given his nickname and description as the core of Kamomedai's defense. He certainly seems capable. A pertinent threat over the middle, his ability to use a jump floater, receiving a waterfall ball, and how often he correctly predicts and stuffs Karasuno's attacks. After being complimented by his teammates that nothing seems to faze him, that he seems so carefree and casual, the high schooler replies it's because he learned how to let things go. Hirugami's had it all. His background, when taken at face value, seems similar to Ushijima's. He came from a volleyball family, he started at an early age, he constructed a strong mindset. He was naturally athletic. He attended a powerhouse middle school. I have no doubt if his middle school teammates evaluated him, they would say he was a talented player. The Mia twins confirmed this, stating that while he was good, he was much more on edge, playing as if he were a man possessed. But when we first meet him, he's nothing like that. There's this idea that Hirugami embodies. His first name, Sachiro, meaning good luck. When the first character of his name is combined with his brother's name, the two combine to create the word meaning happiness. Hirugami's future has been laid out before him since the very beginning. He's destined to be a volleyball star, to stand on the grandest of stages, and to take on the world. Or at least, that's what he was supposed to be. Talent breeds both internal and external expectations, the weight of which cannot be understated. Over a period of time, this weight causes Hirugami's mentality to grow far too zealous. It constrains him, strangling him slowly as he becomes more and more detached from the things around him. Yet his efforts, however unhealthy, seem to bear some fruit with his achievement of the Outstanding Athlete award. Reality is far different. He's been keenly unaware of how ruinous his volleyball journey has truly been. Furudate does a terrific job of showing this transformation through his eyes, from enthusiastic and clear to jaded and opaque. Everything in volleyball is connected. This is a theme echoed throughout Haikyuu, but only in a positive manner, so it's jarring to apply it in a negative context. A bad serve receive leads to an unideal set. The unideal set leads to a predictable spike. The spike is either easily received or shut down. It is this spiral which Hirugami embarks on, a fixation on this idea of no failure, of never messing up. Because if he did, he'd be left behind. I don't think it's a stretch to say that Hirugami intertwines his self-worth with his performance. When hearing what seems to be an excuse by a teammate, he's baffled. Being in a slump is a pitiful excuse, he thinks to himself. You weren't doing it correctly. You weren't enough. Do better. Focus. Try harder. And when he feels guilt over those thoughts and has a chance to directly address them, he distracts himself instead. His mindset has been in motion for a long time. I want to becomes, if I have to. For as long as I continue to improve, who cares about the cost? Haikyuu as a series speaks directly to the necessity of connection on any level, whether that's in personal growth, improvement of technique, or winning the match. Without the connections that bind us to one another, without the serve-receive, that first step, we can only go so far alone. His detachment reaches a chilling separation of self. He regards his hands as if they were a separate living entity before he begins to mindlessly scrape his knuckles across a stone wall. It's jarring. The bottom of the panel even has a pair of his teammates ahead of him. But they don't notice. How would they when he's been isolating himself? I've thought about Hirugami's situation over and over again many times since I first read it, and it still shakes me to my very core. The overly critical internalization, the diminishing of certain things once important to him, the belief that his teammates are shackling him, and that if he just tries harder, goes for longer, pushes more, he'll achieve what he really wants. He'll finally feel fulfilled. He won't, of course. How do I know this? Because I, like so many of you, have carried an immovable weight similar to Hirugami. And no matter how much you claw, struggle, and snatch for every inch, none of it seems to really matter. No progress is made. Small victories are meaningless. There's no satisfaction. Any failure is a disaster, the starting point for another spiral. But thankfully, like Oikawa before him, someone who's been watching him this whole time finally steps in. A sudden yank and an outburst from his second-year teammate, whose name he doesn't even know, brings some lucidity. And then it all comes crashing down on him. His eyes finally open, the illusion shattered. He admits that maybe he doesn't like volleyball very much after all. I mentioned earlier that I found Furudate's choice to include a character like Hirugami this late to be quite bold. We've seen characters push themselves to their limits, but not to the point of immense burnout, and certainly not intentional self-harm. In Hirugami's case, he's pushed himself so far that he openly admits that maybe he doesn't like volleyball much after all. In a series where volleyball is the central focus. It'd be like if a character in Naruto said, "Yeah, I don't want to be a ninja anymore." The concept of burnout is not confined solely to fiction. An article on ESPN in July of 2019 spoke to the threat of youth basketball, specifically on a physical level. In a nutshell, the study spoke to the rigors of youth basketball and to the frequency of injuries caused by overuse. While Hirugami's struggle isn't necessarily on a physical level, he pushes his mentality so hard and so far that it finally breaks. Who knows what might have happened if Hoshiumi didn't step in, which foreshadows what comes later in the final set. He was supposed to have volleyball at the center of his life. He was supposed to love it. Hoshiumi's simplistic, "Why don't you just quit?" seems a little insensitive when taken at face value. But it's exactly what Hirugami needed to hear. The realization that he could stop playing and walk away at any time is what brings him peace. And that's beautiful. In his words, it felt like the whole world opened up to me. Hirugami doesn't have to follow the path laid out for him since birth. His destiny is his to determine. After all, he isn't like his brother, his sister, or Hoshiumi. It's okay to let go. I'd argue one of the most impressive traits of an athlete is their ability to shake off a mistake. Not to completely ignore it, but in their ability to not dwell on the mistake, to stay present in the moment, and look towards the next play with the knowledge that the match's outcome is not yet decided. I've seen this time and time again in both routine and historic moments alike, where a player shakes the seemingly immovable weight off their back to deliver on the next play. This idea is foreshadowed before the reveal of Hirugami's backstory. In chapter 350, Hinata remarks that he finally understands. Being good means being free. All of these volleyball fundamentals, bumping serves, blocking, spiking, even the way one thinks is a skill that can be practiced. But it all begins with this idea that making a mistake isn't the end of the world, that it won't kill you. Tsukushima takes note of this as he watches Hirugami. He's processing information like a machine, for all his shackles have fallen away. It is this very idea that makes him such a force in the Kamomedai match, and what helps Asahi to rise to the occasion at several key moments. Yet, this isn't the last bit of wisdom that Furudate imparts through Hirugami's story. In the final arc, we see him talking with Hoshiumi. True to his word that he would not pursue volleyball after high school, he entered veterinarian school. While applied to a different concept, his musings still hold true when applied to the idea of talent. Doing something you love is the first step, but that doesn't mean it'll be easy. Sometimes it might be even harder because you're so invested in it. After all of the many challenges you and I will both face throughout our lives, our mental blocks will be a constant obstacle. But those difficulties won't seem so insurmountable because you're doing something you love. Hirugami may have had all the factors. He may have had the natural aptitude, the physical traits, a strong mentality, and luck. But even though he was able to nurture his physical traits and intangibles tied to volleyball, he improved at the cost of his mentality and love of the game. He burnt out, an outcome that was unfortunately predictable when he never took a moment to focus on rest and recovery. And when someone loses their appetite for something, it's nearly impossible to get back. One of the most important and difficult traits to refine in the talent formula, a strong mind is often what separates those who are good from those who are great. Andrew Luck has remained largely out of the public eye since his retirement. Murmurs of his possible return to football have been muted, but the best chance to understand his mentality is an interview a little over 4 years after his retirement. It was the many hits he took during his career, the absolute pressure cooker of being a starting quarterback in the NFL, the grueling road of rehab from all his injuries, the near breaking of his marriage. And when he finally looked at himself in the mirror and talked with his wife, he realized he didn't like the man who he was, who he had become. And so he left. And despite the whispers and the things that he misses, Luck is adamant that he isn't coming back to the game of football. He isn't willing to give up the things in his life now, and he has no desire to go through some parts of his experience again. These two, though one fictional and one in reality, both carried the immovable weight of talent. In the end, the weight proved to be too heavy. He may not have been a volleyball star in the end due to his mentality. But does that mean Hirugami was a failure? Absolutely not. Hirugami didn't reach the peak of what he could have been regarding volleyball, but as seen in the final arc, he did end up finding happiness true to his namesake, even if it did take him a little longer than others. I may not know you personally, but I can unequivocally say that you aren't limited to only one way of being talented. I can promise you with all my heart that you and we aren't limited to only one way of being great.